Hi friends, I'm Pam and welcome to A Scrappy Little Joy. Today we are starting a brand new series here at our channel. It is called the Scrappy Starter Series. This is a series of videos that we will be creating to walk you through some of the most commonly used block units in quilting and with respect to units that make up bigger quilt units. So with today, though, we're starting with everybody's favorite, one of the most common, but also one that has a lot of intricacies and factors to it that you might not know about. This is the half square triangle and everything you never knew that you needed to know or wanted to know about half square triangles is happening here. Our friend Jane is going to be quiet today. I have just put everything together so that we can just kind of roll through this and I can share some of my best tips and tricks for the best half square triangles as you go along. I'm going to scoochy this over here so that I can just kind of bring things over as I need them. First things first, down in the description, I have created some charts for you, and these are not just any half square triangle charts. They give you multiple measurements here, which I think you're going to find handy. The first one that we're going to start with is the half square triangle. Let me put these in order first of all. The half square triangle 2 at a time, okay? And what you'll see is that I have 2 here. And the reason I have 2 is that most often if we are making 2 at a time half square triangles, we're going to need more than 2, probably 4 at least. And so the 2 at a time method starts just like this, where we have whatever size square is recommended on our sheet. It's generally, if I look here at my calculation, it is adding 1 inch to your finished size. If you want minimal trimming, or if you want more trimming, I've added another measurement there. I have made this whole chart for you, so this is the calculation up here if you need it, if you need something smaller or something larger, but I bet you most all of the blocks that you're going to cut, you're going to find are right here on this chart for you. So if we look at our square, this is for all of the half square triangles that we're going to create today, just for good measure. I'm going to take my shoes off, even though I'm not sewing. I'm more comfortable a little bit closer this way. All of our half square triangles that we're going to create today would be 3-inch finished. So we are making these 3.5 inches. So the 2 at a time method, for those of you who don't know, it's very simple. You are taking 2 like-sized squares, whatever your cut dimension tells you to cut here, sandwiching them right sides together and drawing a diagonal line in one direction on the lighter fabric, just the fabric that you can see better, okay? And so then once you've drawn that line, you're going to sew. I always do a scant 1/4 of an inch as opposed to a 1/4 of an inch, just because when you get into that habit, you've always got just a little extra trimming room if you're making it scant, so why wouldn't you? It's good practice anyway. So anyway, then once we've sewn a scant 1/4 of an inch on each side of that line, we're just going to cut on that line right down the middle. And that is going to give us 2 half square triangles. Easy peasy, right? And so, as you know, as I mentioned, you generally always need 2, right? At least 2. So I'm going to make another one the same way, okay? And this is going to get trimmed, and we're going to talk a little bit about different trimming techniques, different trimming tools, and how you can trim your half square triangles with any ruler, no matter what size it is, no matter what the lines look like on your ruler, and I'll show you how. Okay, so that is that. Now look what happens though. We have the cutest little, just made of 4 half square triangles. This is our cute little pinwheel block, right there. Okay, so that, I'm going to put those all together. Now we're going to talk about 4 at a time, half square triangles. Look at another chart for that, okay? And this is going to give you all the instructions as well. So these are going to be a little bit of a refresher. in case you forget what I've shared. But the video today is going to be sharing lots of other little parts that aren't going to be listed on there. So that's why we're here today. So this starts also with 2 squares sandwiched right sides together, right? No lines. We're not going to draw any lines on this one. We are just going to sew a scant 1/4 inch seam all the way from a scant 1/4 inch from the edge all the way around. You can run right off the edge if you want. What I do is I like to stop at each corner, put my needle down, and then pivot, lift my presser foot, and then pivot and keep going. So if that's what we've done for that, then what we need is to cut it. And what we're going to do with that is to just cut on the diagonal in both directions. Easy peasy. And there we have our 4 half square triangles. Now, the difference with this, and I want to grab one of our half square triangles from our first block. This is the difference. You're not going to notice probably any difference if your fabrics are non-directional. We are going to talk about directional fabrics coming up, so stick with me for that one, because there are some cool features when we're doing our half square triangles with directionals like stripes. But let's look at the difference here. This is the one thing that you will hear that makes some people shy away from wanting to do 4 at a time half square triangles, is the fact that these are trimmed, these are cut apart on the bias, and so on the diagonal as opposed to on the straight grain. If you're looking at the half square triangle that you have just made with the 2 at a time, hear that? That's on the straight grain. Not a lot of stretch, right? Here, I'm not going to make that sound because it's not going to make that sound, but you can see the stretch, right? Now, some people shy away from this because they're worried they're going to get a lot of twist in their blocks. I don't find that at all. I just find that I sew gently anyway. So as long as you're not stretching and pulling and tugging on your fabrics to line them up together or line them up to the partner block that you're sewing it to, I never run into issues with this at all. But that is just something that you want to be aware of. So anyway, but here's the cool thing. Same block, right? 4 at a time. Look at, they're just the same. It's just that this is on the straight grain and this is on the bias. But once this block is sewn into your quilt or whatever project you're making, no issue. Doesn't matter whether it's sewn on the straight grain or the bias. So that is that's something I don't worry about. One other thing that I would suggest is if you're going to avoid anything, this half square triangle technique would be the one to avoid a lot of steam, right? Steam can distort on the best day. I'm not a steam quilter. A lot of people love to quilt with steam. But that would be could potentially cause some distortion, some stretching, some twisting that you wouldn't want with your 4 at a time half square triangle. So that is that. We are ready for 8 at a time half square triangle. Of course, my friends, look at another one, another chart for you. Now these are our big squares, okay? This starts us out with a great big, if we're gonna create 3.5 inch unfinished, 8 of them out of this unit or these 2 fabrics layered together, we're gonna need an 8-inch square at least. And again, that's for our small or our minimal trimming. We're going to need more than that, a little bit more if you want to trim, if you want to have a little more trimming room. Okay, so look here. Now what we've got is our larger piece of fabric and our line drawn in each direction diagonally. And we're sewing a seam, scant 1/4 inch on each side of that line. Then here is the tricky part. Not tricky, but here's the part that is, under normal circumstances, you think, okay, I'm gonna cut on that line, which is what we do with our 2 at a time half square triangle. I'm going to turn this. Rotating mats for things like half square triangle trimming, huge, if you have one available to you. Okay, then we've got four cuts, right? We need 4 more cuts, or 2 more cuts, right? We've got 4 units. We need to make 2 more cuts. We're going to make a vertical cut and a horizontal cut. And the way we do that is by lining our line up. And that's why this is so helpful to have a rotating mat, because you haven't had to pick this up and turn it. So I'm going to line up my edge on one of these lines and then along this line or this line. And then I'm going to be able to cut right at that point, right down the center. And then I'm going to do the same this way. And there. Now we have 8 half square triangles that we are ready to trim. And so when we're doing that, let's just take a minute to trim. Well, first things first, this is our bigger block. This is going to be a bigger block, because what are we going to do with 8? We could make 2 of our pinwheels, or look, we could make a little extra diddly here. And this is a block. If you enjoy this block and you are interested in learning how to make this block, it will be coming up very soon, so stay tuned for that. I can't tell you when, but it won't be too very long. So anyway, but there we just have our 8 half square triangles, all going in different directions, surrounding a nice little 3.5 inch center, or 3 inch finished center square. So that would be a great purpose for using the 8 inch technique. Let's take a minute, if we can, and talk about trimming. Before we move on to, I just see a stray pin over here. Freaks me out. It will wind up under Mr. Wood's foot. It happens every time. Before we move into working with stripes and the variations on how those work, I want to talk just a minute on how we trim and how we can trim with any ruler whatsoever, no matter what. Now, if you have been around my channel, you know that most often, if I am cutting half square triangles, I am using this little, it's a Creative Grids folded corner clipper. That's just how I cut my half square triangles. Where's my cutter? I line it up. If this needs to be 3.5 inches, I line my seam up on that line, and just a little bit ahead up here. I give myself a little room here so that I can trim this side off, and also my little point, and then I can just turn this like this, and I can line it exactly up with 3.5 on the bottom, and then I can take it right off. My favorite way to do it. And then I go and press, and you might be pressing one in one direction, or the other direction, or you might be pressing them open if your pattern calls for you to press it open, or you have made the determination that you want the flattest seam possible and this isn't going to be nesting up with anything else. So that is one way to trim a half square triangle. Another way to trim a half square triangle is if you want to go ahead and press that half square triangle. I'm going to press it toward one side, and then we're going to choose, as best we can, not critical, because I'll show you a way around that. But ideally what we want is any ruler that is that has a diagonal line on it, okay? Even if you need this to be 3.5 inches and you don't have a ton of rulers. I was looking for my I have a long ruler that is that's similar to this. There is a diagonal line on it, so even though it might be wonky to use it, you can still use that to cut your half square triangles. I am a lefty, so I am always going to do things a little bit, call it, I don't like to say backwards, but opposite to what a right-handed person would do. So I'm going to be lining my, my square up so that if there's 3.5 right here, I'm going to scoochy this up. So I've got just a little bit of room on this side, but that diagonal line is right on my seam, okay? And then I'm going to trim this edge and this edge. And I took my turny guy. See, this is my big turny guy. So I'll just put this back here. And then what I'm going to do, I've just trimmed these two, and now I'm going to turn it around this way, and I can trim those edges off. And then here, since I've just cut those, I know they're 3.5 inches. I know it's 3.5 inches if I line this up, and now I can just trim these two edges off. And look, I've got my diagonal line, or my diagonal seam right down the middle. Now, the other thing, the one last tip, in the event you don't have a ruler handy that has a line on it, the other thing that you can do, it took me a while to find a ruler that has no line. This happens to be a fat quarter cutter ruler. There are no diagonal lines on this, and there are hardly any lines. I have to sneeze. Excuse me. And there are hardly any lines because it's for cutting fat quarters and different pre-cut sizes. But I wanted to use this because I wanted to show you the other thing that I do. I keep a stash of little, every time I need one, I just put it in my stack. These are cardstock. You can use paper, but cardstock is ideal, maybe a little piece of cardboard. This is any different size square that I use, that I need for my sewing. This happens to be a 3.5 inch. So if I use a 3.5 inch square and I line it up in the corner, I can mark with a Sharpie on, what I've also done is drawn a diagonal line, and I'll show you why that's important. First of all, it helps you to be able to find the center if you're fussy cutting anything, which is kind of cool. But look what happened if I did that, and I did this already ahead of time. I marked with a Sharpie right here, little corner, and then I just ran it on the diagonal. Now look, if I've got my little half square triangle, and this guy isn't pressed, but if I've got my little half square triangle, I can do just what I just did. And I can line it up on this ruler that doesn't have any lines, okay? Because I've made them. Oh, and remember, hand sanitizer and a little napkin, a little piece of paper towel will get that Sharpie off every time, no worries. Another friend mentioned hairspray. So that's not something I've tried, but that is a recommendation. Okay, and so that is our trimming. Let's talk about stripes. What I've done is prepared half square triangles 2 at a time way. And I've done it in 2 different ways. And my thought process is, let's consider, we did some pinwheels, but let's consider that we want to make a churn dash block, okay? And here is our churn dash components, with the exception of half square triangles that go over in these 4 corners. So if we have that sitting right here, I just want to make sure that you can see it. I have here where I have cut my half square triangles. Can you see the stripe? I have a striped fabric here, and you can see that the stripes are going in the same direction. And these 2, if I'm going to need 4, I'm going to do 2 at a time, 2 at a time. If I have cut these on the diagonal going in the same direction, look what happens when let me just press them so that you can kind of see. I'll just press that one. So look what happens when they're all going in the same direction. Our stripes are gonna go, one's gonna go one way and one's gonna go the other way. All well and good, right? That's great, if that's the way you want it to go. But what if you kind of want them all going in one direction? Then you're thoughtful about the line, the way you draw your line. In this case, I've drawn my line in this direction and in this direction. Look what happens. So let's swap these guys out. I just put those there so they're out of the way. Let's say I want them to all go up and down. See? What I've done is effectively I've made this corner and this corner with one half square triangle, and this corner with another half square triangle. And they're all going the same way. There. All of them are going up and down. Oh, look at, oh, see what I did? I sewed that wrong side together because, you know, I'm vastly imperfect, my friends, if you haven't noted. There we are. But you can see how if we wanted them all to go in one direction, then we would have that because we changed the direction of which way we drew our line in relationship to those stripes. Okay, now let's talk about the 4 at a time. This is where it gets fun. Here's our 4 at a time method. And I've already cut these and pressed them open. But remember, this is how they looked before. But this is where we start to see some really cool features with our directional, or with our on the bias. Look how cool this is. Now I haven't trimmed these. But if that's where they go, look how cool our little diagonals go, right? And so the same is true for, oh, but also, look what happens with our stripes if we're doing, this is also for our 4 at a time. They go like this. Another great reason why if you are avoiding 4 at a time half square triangle method, you're missing out here, okay? I don't have a half square triangle, a pinwheel block with just the way the other half square triangles go. But this I thought was just really cool that I wanted you to see. So think about how your stripes are going to go depending upon how you cut your 2 at a time and then your 4 at a time. And if you're considering doing a 4 at a time, imagine how that can really be, in this case especially, be so striking, and it can make your pinwheel just go in that circle even more. So I love that about the 4 at a time method. 8 at a time half square triangle with stripes is going to be, see, so we're going in both directions. We've drawn our line. Where's our line? Oh, I drew our line on this side. Okay. Look at this block, right? Look what we've done. Because we've got our 8 at a time, we've got the ability to go in 4 directions, outwards, or 2 directions. They're all going out here, and then I've put my center ones all going this way, right? So that is a variation in technique, and you could do this the same way if you cut your 2 at a time half square triangles in those opposite directions. That is going to give you this same that same look on your for your little, I don't even know what this block is called, but I love it and I'm very excited. This is going to be a fun block in a project that we have coming up. Anyway, oh my gosh, half square triangles. I hope you learned so much. I learned so much just organizing and preparing for this. Don't forget your charts down below in the description center and in the description section. And if you enjoyed this video, please help me by liking and sharing and subscribing and clicking the little bell. Anything that you can do that could potentially help me reach more quilters that would maybe enjoy the vibe that we have going on here at A Scrappy Little Joy. I'll see you next time.